I'm Professor Paul Phillips, and I'm the host of Sustainable Strategy Brief Live, and I'm welcoming you to our episode 3, where we will take a canter through sprint concept, and I'm delighted to have two colleagues, Petter, who will be our guest, and Michael, who's going to be powering the show. Stay with us until the end, because we've got something we'd like to share with you. And just stick with us, and thank you for coming along or looking at this video when you feel fit. So, Petter, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Michael,
Absolutely.
Are you ready?
I'm ready, Paul. I'm ready to do the 100 meters. I reckon I can do it in 9.59 seconds, which I think is the world record.
Good. So, let's move on to the first part, and I was given an introduction about the definition of sustainable value. Sustainable value is an interesting concept because it is used, it is known, but actually academically and in a practitioner perspective, it remains ambiguous. So when you bring the two terms together, you have something that's very interesting that we should be looking into, we haven't solved. For the purpose of the show, the common premise around this sustainable value is that it's about outcomes being integrated around three things: there being economic, environmental, and societal benefits. So when you bring these together, that's how we track sustainable value. Two things to consider with that is, number one, it can be negative or positive, which is worth thinking about carefully. And thirdly, a lot of organizations talk about their impact, but value is more important than impact, because the value is what the stakeholders are looking for. So, Michael.
Thank you for that passion for you. And you know what? Because I'm so incredibly well organized, I've actually got it on the screen. What is the sprint? So you're the author of the ESG sprint. I don't think that's the full title of the book. What's the full title of the book?
The full title of the book is ESG Sprint, 7 steps to get your business quickly on track for a sustainable future.
Okay, and so just tell me very, very briefly, super briefly, and we come back to this in more depth shortly. What has the sprint got to do with sustainable value?
Well, the sprint is really a way of working where you can address a problem in an efficient, quick, intense way. And that's why I've used this approach for this topic, because it's so common working with this to spend a lot of time on it, let it drag out, drown in analysis, and not make progress. So I've taken this approach, which I think we can come back to it in more detail, but it's all about really understanding a problem and seeing how it applies to you. What are you going to do with it? What are the options you have, and how can you move forward? This is something you can do quickly in the sprint.
Thank you for that, Petter. Just going to run a quick animation which goes through sort of a summary of what it's all about today, and then Paul will expand upon that. Right, well, Paul, so could you just expand upon that? So what's the theme for today, and how are we gonna structure it?
Okay, for today's show, what we'll be looking at is the core challenges organizations face when dealing with sprints. We're going to delve into some of the specifics, so stay with us. Secondly, we are going to provide some examples from organizations that we're aware of that we have worked for in the past, which is Petter as well, first to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about the criticality of stakeholder management. That's something that I find gets omitted. And then we're going to, at the end, we're going to do two things. Number one would be to think about is the sprint a marathon? Is it a marathon or a sprint? What do we actually mean? I think we should have a little bit of fun with that. So stick with us to listen to that. And lastly, I've got a short call to action of something that I've been working on that I'll be happy to share with people once they complete a certain wording to direct message me. So, so Michael, that's what the show's going to be listed about, and we can now move on.
Okay, thank you, Paul. So okay, let's get straight into it. So what's the problem? Is there not enough training? Is there some kind of a false start? Poor track? One of the core sustainable issues are indeed ESG issues holding back an organisation. Petter, can you? Here's the question. It would be the question if I went in the right direction. What's holding it back? What is all this?
What's holding it back? I think that what is in many cases holding businesses back is that you are not focused on what you actually can do and can do quickly. And I think a trap that a lot of businesses fall into is that they go straight into this kind of compliance mindset. It's all about fulfilling requirements that are set by others, and maybe regulatory requirements, maybe different kinds of expectations. And I find that this can be a pretty damaging kind of trap to fall into, because what you really need to focus on is the practicalities of the risks, the issues, and the opportunities, basically, that are facing the business. And you should start from there. There are risks and there are opportunities, and you need to take a very practical approach to identifying them, seeing how they apply to your business, how they affect you, what are the implications of it, and move on from there. So many businesses are being held back by this sort of approach of going around this topic, overanalyzing, and not making progress on it.
Okay, and Paul, same question for you. What are the core sustainability issues, or indeed ESG issues, holding back organisations?
I'll take a different tact on that, and talk about three things. The first thing, I believe that organisations are being held back because they commence with a vague problem, and with a vague problem, you're not going to get to the solution that you should do. And that's some of the things we'll be touching upon in the show. So that's the first thing, vague problem. Secondly, I would say that you need to have a clear understanding of the world that you exist in. Because what I've noticed now, this show is reaching out to a number of markets, which is encouraging. And when I speak to people, the markets are all different into their market dynamics, in the UK. So therefore, you need to be speaking to experts who understand your dynamics and how you fit into the global world. So that's important to have expertise so that your assumptions are going to be solid and right. You don't want to spend money and assumptions are not right. And thirdly, it's often forgot, but if you're going to do a sprint, you need a great team. And this is something that runs through management. And we know the difficulties of getting great teams that can work. And I've seen this in practice. And with great teams, great things do happen. Thank you.
Okay, all right. And Petter, the core, what are the implications for organizations?
Well, the implications are that you get basically stuck, and you are accepting that this is an important topic, but you are not addressing it in a way that is core to your strategy. And I think that the whole point here is that you need to address this as a business issue, not a compliance issue, not something that you is about doing what is good versus what is not good. This is about addressing your customers and your market in a way that is going to make you competitive for the long term. And sustainability, ESG, needs to be an integral part to your strategy, not something that you do separately. You don't need to have an ESG strategy or a sustainability strategy. You need to make that integral to your business strategy and how you address your market, your competitors, all these things. It's all about how you are attractive to your customers, how you are attractive to the top talent, how you are able to qualify for good financing, how you attract good investors to your business. And this is something that you do by making this integral to how you run your business.
All right, and can we kind of look at this on a sector basis, Petter? I think you wanted to take Aperol as a case study here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not going to spend a lot of time going into big case studies here, but it's just, I've been working with a lot of businesses in the manufacturing sector, where you have, in many cases, pretty complex supply chains, where supply chain transparency is a key issue. It doesn't really matter it doesn't solve the problem if you are doing well within your own supply chain, if you are not also coordinating your work with others across your supply chain. You need to have transparency across that, and you need to understand that you are sourcing from suppliers that can also live up to the standards that you have and that your customers expect from you. And so both when it comes to if we use the ESG term, both on the E and the S and the G dimension, you need to understand that and be reassured that your entire supply chain is able to deliver on the standards that you are setting.
Okay, and then same for you, Paul. If you could just look at the issues holding back organisations, but look at a particular sector. I think you're going to focus on financial services.
Yeah, in terms of financial services have been using sprints for decades, if to be truth be told. And what I've observed in works that I've done with them as an external person in financial services, one of the big things was about throughput, about getting their product that's newly designed into the customer's hands as quickly as possible. And the banks were running sprints to do this. I might add that for some people, they may feel that sprints is all about technology, but that's only for one form of sprints. And we will come into this a little bit, but the banks were designing processes to meet their customers' needs. A specific example I came across was this Asian bank, which had a series of products for 90 days. And after 90 days, the period ended and you went back to normal rates. So of course, what does the markets do? What do the clients do? On the 90th day, they switch and take their funds elsewhere. Now, what was fascinating for me was that the bank leadership team didn't bring in a team of consultants to try to fix the problem. Didn't even try to create a transformational strategy. They employed the sprints to fix the problem, and they basically focused on what the customer required and put together a sprint under the umbrella of dealing with this problem. So when they put together their sprint, the successful outcomes of this was the customer retention period was much stronger. The customers found more products to invest in. They found also that the organizations was able to improve the fixed deposits, the products in the other parts of the bank. And lastly, collectively, they were able to reposition themselves in the marketplace in a much higher place, which actually improved their brand and improved their equity of their business. So they actually used the sprint to turn around a significant problem in their bank, which now is very successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Now, Petter, we've already touched. I asked you to define what you mean by a sprint earlier, and you did so very, very briefly. But this is kind of what we're talking about today. I think we need to go into a little bit more detail. So can you just define what a sprint is, just in a little bit more detail, please?
Sure. I'm sure some of our viewers would be familiar with the concept of design sprints. This is a concept that was developed by Google Ventures, and there's a guy called Jake Knapp who has also written a book about that. And The origin of this was really to how to develop products and services quickly and test them to get to a result and get them to market. So, and the design sprint was all about really understanding a problem or a need by a customer, sketching or developing alternative solutions to it. And designing a real solution to the problem, prototyping it, and then testing it with the stakeholders. And you have stakeholders involved in the process, both at the start and the end. This is a very effective way of addressing all kinds of different problems. And I worked with a business where we were using this concept for developing products for clients, but we also have applied it for different processes, for strategy development and so on, but also increasingly using this approach to developing and addressing the whole sustainability area in a company. And that's through a lot of work with many clients. This has evolved into that concept that was described in my book, ESG Sprint. So what it is all about is really understanding the problem, defining how it applies to you, seeing what kind of alternative approaches you can take to this and deciding on what is the right one for you, and then looking at the practicalities of how to implement that and assign resources and getting ready to go. And also very importantly, to check in with stakeholders, both at the start and the end of the process. You need to root this all in a deep understanding of what your stakeholders need from you. And you should also test at the end of this process, how does your approach really address that? And are you coming up with a solution that is really fit for those stakeholder requirements?
Okay, thank you, Petter. And now, so thanks for that bit of history. Who was the guy you said that kicked it all off? Something Knapp, I think you said.
Yeah, Jake Knapp, K-N-A-P-P is his name. He sort of developed this concept with Google Ventures when they were developing products and services with their clients, and startup businesses to basically get their products to market quickly. Very much recommended both his book and he has some podcasts, and it's a very interesting his experience in this topic of product development and sprinting for that. Very interesting. Very.
All right. Well, thank you for that. There you go, and a good plug for someone else's book there. So there are different types of sprints, I think. What are the different types of sprints that are being used in practice?
What different types of sprints? Well, in the case of this sprint, I think you have. Did you want to show a graphic on this at this point, Michael?
This is the 30-day graphic, is it, or?
No, okay. Well, so there are different types of sprints, of course, but it's like the concept that I have described in my book is really a 5-day sprint at the core of it. But
I've got a graphic. Yes,
you can extend that. You can make it bigger. You can make it smaller. We've done this in 2.5 days, very intensely. Ideally, you have a day for each one of these stages, because it is great to sort of work with your team through each one of them, because then you have a chance to allocate the time, address the topic properly, and then move on to the next. But again, at first, it's really all about understanding the issues that you are facing. I'm talking here about both risks and opportunities, defining how they apply to you. What are the implications of these challenges to you? That's the second stage. And 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 then about shaping the solution, where you are basically drawing out what will your business look like in this future scenario, and charting the course to get there. And then to validate this also with your stakeholders, to check that you have been addressing the issues that you have identified from your stakeholders. And then I'm sure we have some very curious viewers who are saying, but what are the next 2 steps then? If you said in your book title that there was 7 steps to get your business quickly on track, that is really because there are 2 steps that come after this sprint. They are really about mobilizing people and measuring and tracking performance, and it's something that you need to do continuously afterwards. So it's not part of the sprint. Okay. 5-day sprint themselves, but afterwards.
All right. And so, Paul, can you comment on the topic of the different types of sprints?
I'm sorry,
Paul. Sorry, say it again, Michael. Sorry.
On the different types of sprints, can you come in on the topic?
I mean, Peter's talked about design. I will talk about strategy sprints, something that I've been involved in a significant amount of times. The strategy sprints. I would say they occur a lot of times when the leadership team's gone on a strategy retreat and they come back with some ideas and they then run them through sprints. I've seen this in travel and tourism, for example, where they were concerned about the technology at that time. They were worried about blockchains, if you can remember blockchains. And we organized a technology sprint during the course of a conference, which went down very well. And at the end, we presented to the couple hundred people in the audience. So that works well. In universities, I've seen sprints at university levels, departmental levels, because as we know, in universities, things take longer to get from idea to implementation because of the cycle of the operation. But we've done some sprints to bring new products to the marketplace. And the thing about the strategy sprints, you can bring in innovation, which you won't normally do, and you bring in the right people to help you move forward. So there's a couple of examples. And then I would say you could have transformational sprints. Now, the transformational change management programs, we all know about them, but how many of us actually put that into a actual sprint? Because we know the 70% of transformational projects fail. And they fail for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is that people just get tired of them after a year. So why not put them into a sprint and compress all the activity, agree on a decision, and move forward in the right way? And I think that is very, very useful in a transformational change type projects. And I don't see that, but it works very successfully. Michael,
can I comment on this, Michael? I think this whole idea of compressing things, as that Paul mentioned, is absolutely essential about this, because you could easily spend weeks and months on analyzing the problem, for instance, and just trying to develop an understanding of the issues at stake and so on. But if you compress this, you will have enough understanding to be able to move on to the next stage of the process. You will have a chance to go back and validate things anyway. But the compressing it and having this sense of urgency through the process is in itself a value for bringing things towards a conclusion.
All right, thank you, Peter. Now, so how can organizations deploy sprints to create their sustainable value proposition to future-proof their business? Paul, I think you wanted to have a go at that question first.
This question links to our previous episode on business cases, and the value proposition is, a lot of people know about value propositions, but I would argue people are not using the tool correctly. Because they're not speaking to their stakeholders, which we discussed later on, but with their potential customers. So what we're looking at about a value proposition, now it should be written in a sentence, really. Okay, say 2 sentences, but it should be something that's very short. It shouldn't be a thesis. to the point where you bring everything you want into that one sentence, that people understand what you're about. And then, as we talked in our last show, we did talk about with Alan, and we did talk about the value pool. Which pool are you fishing in? Now, I know of organizations that have got a very good product, excellent product, but the pool that they're fishing in is never going to let them hit targets in terms of the key metrics they need to do, as in EBITDA and different revenue targets. The pool is too small. Also, what are we talking about when we're doing a sprint? Is it about to grow the business, which is revenue? Is it about to reduce costs? Let us not forget, there's a lot of cost competition going in the marketplace. Is it about risk? Risk is a big word now in this space, okay? And the other thing is trust and reputation. Is this going to damage our trust and reputation in the marketplace? It tends to get forgotten. We still read in the paper on the front page, these companies have done A, B, and C, and the market has just been like, had their hands up, coming out saying, what on earth is going on here? So in terms of the sprints, it's a design stage, as we've been talking about. And just one piece of things, we're throwing around some authors. Tony Ulwick, he talks about jobs to be done. And I think that is really recommended reading for anybody who doesn't quite understand why is it when an organization thinks it's delivering value, there is no bite from the customer. When people are buying things from you, or products or services, they're procuring them for a job to be done. And you have to understand the job that's to be done. So that's what I've just thrown in there to say another thing to consider. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, so you're just talking about the pool being too small there. Just to be clear, you're talking about pool P-O-O-L. You're not talking about yourself there.
Well, no, I think the consultants have a formula for that, don't they? The target market.
Indeed, they do.
They have a market for that, so you need to look into that.
Okay. Petter, similar question to you. How do organizations deploy sprints to create their sustainable sustainable value proposition to future-proof their business? You're on mute.
Sorry, I would argue that deploying sprints is something that you should do in your organization, across the organizations, and across different topics. Of course, I've been advocating this very much for this topic, but the point is really that if you mobilize, if you get your team into the same room and you go together into dive together into a topic, and you say, this is the problem that we have to solve. These are the options that we have available to us. This is the kind of ambition that we can set out for ourselves, depending on whether we want to be a market leader or a follower, or this needs to be consistent with how you operate as a business. Well, in that case, if we make these decisions for ourselves, what does it really require to get there, and how do we sketch out our roadmap to get there? What are the objectives and the key results that we need to achieve to get there? And again, rooted in deep, solid stakeholder understanding. So this is a way of working. This is a systematic approach to solving a problem and doing it quickly, and that's how businesses should be deploying it. And again, just one final point on it. It's important that this is a topic. When you're talking about sustainability, about ESG as a topic for the business, don't outsource this to one department. It needs to be something that the leadership team together addresses. A lot of companies have failed on this by putting it, assigning a task force on it, or giving it to someone who doesn't have enough attention, or enough resources or whatever. It needs to be a topic for the management team, and then cascade through the organization.
Okay, thanks, Petter. We are running way over time at the moment. We were talking about the 5-day framework earlier. Just thought it might be just pausing on this, but for no more than 30 seconds, about the 5 days: Monday, understand; Tuesday, define; Wednesday, shape; Thursday, chart; and Friday, validate. I don't want to go into much detail because we're running so over behind time now. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Petter, super briefly.
No, I would just say that ideally you do it like this over a week. It's not always possible to take a week out of the calendar of people. You can compress it. You can do it in different ways. But this is the way. This is the process. These are the steps that you need to go through, and then how you lay it out time-wise. Ideally, you have a week. If not, you manage in different ways. As I mentioned, we've done it down to 2 days, basically.
Okay, thanks, Petter. Right, Paul, the question for you here. How should organizations apply stakeholder management to validate their sustainable strategy?
Okay, I'll get to the point with this. I would say one has to identify key success factors, KFFs, and align them with the stakeholders. And let us not forget the stakeholder value matrix, the Mendelos matrix, which talks about 2 axes, power and interest. And if you think about it, if a stakeholder has high power, high level of interest, you're on them like a rash, so to speak. And then conversely, if there's low interest and low power, you keep them informed. What I've noticed that organizations tend to forget that once they run a stakeholder analysis, this is a fluid beast, so to speak. Stakeholders change. One only has to think about the electric vehicle market, for example, how stakeholders' requirements and needs around electric vehicles have changed in the last 3 years dramatically in the UK and overseas.
Okay, thanks for that, Paul. And what do organizations tend to struggle with, do you think?
Well, they struggle with, I'll run it out, with uncertainty. And we've got uncertainty around us forever. It's not going to go away. But when we put uncertainty with strategy, there are problems. And I think 2 little frameworks which people talk about, the Barney, if it's brittle, anxious, nonlinear, incomprehensible, that explains the world, and the buckle one which you all know about. These are the things where organizations struggle. They don't have the external intel to perform. We can talk about scenario analysis, but again, that's another tool that gets misused quite a bit. So I would say it's this uncertainty. And when I look at organizations and talk to them, the people that are good, I say they can look around corners. You need to create that sort of sense. You can go look around a corner. So I'll stop for there now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Now, can you both of you share an example of where a sustainable strategy clearly drove organizational change and performance? I'll ask that question to you first, Petter. An example of a sustainable strategy clearly drove organizational change.
Yeah, we haven't really a lot of time left, but I worked with a client in the sporting goods sector, where is making clothing and apparel is a pretty interesting value chain when it comes to sustainability, because in many cases you have to go all the way back to where your cotton is picked and where your fabric is being made, and there's so many stages in this, and you need to really understand both on the environmental side, but also not least on the social side. Is the child labor, the safety and health requirements? All of these things are handled in a proper way or not, and how do you get visibility on it? A lot of companies in that industry have thought that, okay, if we just have a sustainable fabric or a sustainable material, we are sustainable. But that is not solving the problem, and you have to go across the whole value chain. You have to look into that and really mobilize around that and build your organization and organize your resources around that, so that you have one consistent approach throughout. And that's what they did. That's what they also decided not to talk very loud about this because they knew that they were. Had a lot of work to do before they could present themselves as being really sustainable. But at the point when they were really questioned and drilled into on it, they were able to say, okay, we know we have a long way to go, but this is our approach. It's well documented. We have all the steps here. and they came away on that with having improved significantly their way of delivering a sustainable product, and a good also response from the market on it.
Okay, thank you. And very quickly, same question for you, Paul. Can you give us?
Yeah, an example. I'll stick to financial services. There's a company called Citadel, a US hedge fund operation, and during the just after COVID, the CEO was strategizing and kind of speculated what would happen if they had the ability to predict the weather the best in the world. Okay, which is a pretty, noble thing to consider. But being a hedge fund person, lots of money, they went out and hired, 20 top PhDs, scientists, data people, the whole lot. And to cut a long story short, they put in place an operational model that delivered in, I think it was 23 and 24, delivered £12 billion surpluses, because they were able to put that knowledge around the world in things like agriculture, for example. If you know the weather forecast for the next year, 6 months, that's a huge competitive advantage. And Citadel basically put this together, and I believe they are, I think NASA may be a client or something like that, because to generate 12 billion surpluses is phenomenal. And to this day, they are still doing it. As I had a quick look before the show, they are still doing this phenomenon. So what that shows is that you can have an aspiration. I'm not saying that they use sprints, but they put together the ideas very, very quickly, and you can create a new product or a new service. I really do think that's the future. Thank you, Nigel.
Okay, thank you for that. So I've got 2 questions here, and I like to try and combine them into one question, really. Is ESG a marathon or a sprint? And if it's a marathon, then that takes us to the subject of fatigue. So how does this ambition tie in with fatigue? Paul, could you have a go at briefly trying to cover those 2 topics? So is ESG a marathon or sprint? And how does this tie in with, and then how does ambition lead to fatigue?
Okay, let me answer that in reverse, if I may. In terms of fatigue, I was surprised to read, and it's research and people do talk about it, that when you are arguably the CEO of a sustainable business, all right, and you're developing products and services, it is highly stressful, because the stakeholder are much stronger, and you also have to keep your internal people on board. So actually, health and well-being in sustainable organizations, staff have fatigue, mental and well-being issues. So that's just an observation I just want to throw in there, that it's not necessarily the sprint, it's just the nature of the beast of this sustainability thing. Now, going back to, is it a marathon or a sprint? I mean, running out of time. What I would say is that if you treated the sprint as a marathon, it'd be too long. You wouldn't get things done as you would want. People get bored, as we said, with transformational. If it's too short, people will be burning out. So what you need, in my opinion, is a combination of the both. You need to have an overarching framework with short and sharp sprints. Think of long-term strategic planning and short-term strategic planning. They fit together. So I don't think it's either or, it's a bit of both. And I think it's a very important point to consider for organisation. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, and Petter, can you briefly cover that? Is ESG a marathon or a sprint? And how does this tie into ambition versus fatigue?
Well, I think you need to sprint in order to not be left behind as a starting point here. And what I've said in my book title as well is you need to get quickly on track. So there is a bit of a sprint needed at the beginning of this, and then you need to basically keep a high pace afterwards. But that's probably more of a marathon pace. Well, what you should back to the point about incorporating things into your business strategy, because I think that's the best way also to avoid this fatigue being something that damages your business. You should be driven by continuous motivation to serve your customers better and attract the right people and all these things, and get get the right financing to grow your business, get right good investors into the business. All of this is a way of driving your business, which is at the end of the day, when you want a sustainable, competitive business for the long term, you need to align all your resources around this, and that is also the best way to avoid fatigue as something that is breaking it down. It's something that reinforces the energy of the business. That's how it needs to be addressed.
Okay, thank you for that. So the last question, what I thought I'd do is ask you this question, Petter, and then Paul's going to do a sum up, and in your sum up, maybe you could cover this question as well, Paul. But for Lee to start between what we should do in the next 90 days. So what should we do in the next 90 days, Petter? Can you have a go at that?
Well, I mean, the beauty of a sprint approach is that you can actually achieve a lot within a time horizon like that. You can really achieve a lot. What I would say you need to do is to get your team together and get started on the sprint. That should be a first ambition. Whether that is a 2 or 5 day, or you have to split it up into several days spread over a longer time horizon, but get into this topic and get moving on it. When you go through that and you go through those stages of the sprint, you will see the road ahead of you, and that will take shape, your roadmap and your activities and what your priorities and what you need to do next. That will take shape, and then you can start mobilizing all the people in your organization to also drive that and reinforce that momentum going forward. So in a 90-day period, you can get that ball rolling and build up a good momentum.
Okay, thanks for that. So Paul, I'll leave you at the final words with you. So first of all, for Lee to start between ambition and fatigue, what should they do in the next 90 days? Then can you give us a quick sum up? And then there's a bit of a call of action at the end there. So,
right. In fact, this is something we discussed in our previous show. In the next 90 days, plenty of time, as Petra said. But I think the issue is it's a consistent theme in our 3 episodes, actually, that what you need to consider is your starting point, your baseline. So make sure you've got what we call a verified baseline that's accurate and fit for purpose. Not always easily done, but there are ways for that, which we will cover, I'm sure, in other shows. Then you must get the narrative and story right. You can't expect to get investors' money just because on your story. Those days have gone. These guys, they are looking at hard, fast numbers, and we talked about that in the last show. We talked about EBITDA. We talked about, cash flow, net present value, IRR. These are things that people are looking at to provide finances, even internal to the organization. So I think to get your house in order is very, very important. Then going back to the next question, which was, what was that, Peter? I've just...
Well, there's the 90 days, and then you're going to do a quick sort of sum up.
Right, sum up. Yeah. Okay, to sum up, basically, we've covered a lot in this show, hence we've overrun. But I think there's been some very good content. We've gone through the core challenges of organizations. We've talked about stakeholders. We've talked about different propositions around sprints, because some people think sprints are all about technology, but they're not. They can involve services. And we've been providing some examples to show some people, to help them in their strategizing, how you can make money out of weather forecasting, for example. Sports apparel, we can use techniques. And we talked about the sprint and the marathon, which is a bit like a tune. You have to play a tune with those 2 terms, I would say. To end it, the quick call to action is that we're delighted to share with people what we call Discovery Sustainability Sprint Checklist, which we've created off the press. And it's available if you can drop some sprint in the comments, or you can send sprints to me in the LinkedIn. So that's something we just put together based on the contents of this show, because I'm looking to create knowledge from the show that can be shared with individuals. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you, Petter. And thank you all for watching, and see you all again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.